All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks a lot for coming out tonight. My name is Bob Littlefield, and I am the interim superintendent of schools. I've been on the job since last August, and it's really been an honor and a privilege for me to serve my community. I've been a resident of South Kingstown for 37 years. Both of my sons went through South Kingstown schools, beginning with kindergarten and going all the way through South Kingstown High School. So for personal reasons and for citizenship reasons, I'm happy and honored to serve the school department. Tonight, we have organized one final forum to make sure that there is no excuse for anyone in our community to not be fully informed about the question that's being presented to our community on Tuesday next week. Tonight, we're going to attempt something that we've not done before, and that is that this is going to be a hybrid meeting. We are conducting our in-person forum similar to the previous sessions, but we also are conducting a Zoom conference where we have upwards of 70 people signed up to participate tonight via Zoom. Hopefully, I underscore hopefully, that we will allow for questions and comments tonight, and that those who are participating from home will be able to participate with their questions and comments as well. I'll speak to those folks who are at home. Should our technology not work as planned, that when you received an email today with the Zoom link to participate tonight, you also received our YouTube link, so that if the Zoom fails, just click on that YouTube link, and at the very least, you'll be able to watch and listen in. So that's the technology disclaimer, but I do want to recognize Doug Snow, who is our school district technology director, and who has been instrumental in setting us up for this hybrid meeting. We've got lots of folks here tonight who have put in an awful lot of time into this project so far, including members of our building committee. Dave Palizzetti is here. Brian Mahoney is here. Also a school committee member on the building committee and chair of the building committee is Kate Massinanti. Our town manager, Jim Manny.
Been an OPM in Rhode Island for the better part of a decade. I'm also a parent. I have 2 young children in Rhode Island public schools, and my hometown is going through an effort much like this. In fact, I actually live on the same street as one of the schools that's being built. So I like to think I have not just professional, but personal experience with what you guys are looking at today. We have an abbreviated presentation, but for those of you that are new to the project, I encourage you to visit the project website, which is skschoolproject.com. There is links to presentations. There is links to all of the schematic design documents. There's over 200 pages of detailed cost estimates in the document library, about 30 different frequently asked questions that we have developed based on feedback we've received from the community. And of course, there's contact us location. That contact us goes right to me. and I've got a really quick turnaround time. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us there. With that, we have a brief agenda. We'll be talking about project highlights and importance. We'll turn it over to Jim Manny to talk a little bit about tax implications after I go through the budget. And then we'll talk about next steps and schedule if the project does move forward with a positive vote on May 7th. And with that, Phil, I'll turn it over to you to talk about some of the highlights.
Thank you, Chris. My name is Philip Conte. I'm an architect with Studio Jade and very happy to continue our relationship into stage 3 upon a successful bond vote. Stemming from the stage 2, one of the important things we want you to be able to do at this evening's meeting is to ask questions. We want you to be more informed when you leave than you are now. The focus of the presentation is the bond question, which is on Tuesday, May 7th, which is a new high school at School Street and athletic fields at Curtis Corner. That's the project that has been approved by RIDE, and that is the project that is eligible for reimbursement. Can you go ahead and advance to the next slide? Go ahead, one more. So this is the concept that was developed during stage 2, which is a new high school on the field, currently Hazard Field, adjacent to the Hazard Building. You see that its shape is rectilinear, compact, and located with the main entrance facing School Street. Go ahead, next slide. So we've recently developed this graphic. Oh, there you go. We recently developed this graphic to help you understand a little bit better views of the concept and improvements to the site. In particular of interest is the outline of the existing high school, so that you see that building will remain in place during construction of the new school. After the new school is complete, the existing building would be demolished and that turned into open fields, much like what you have right now here at the Hazard Field. We will basically do a land swap. We identified views 1, 2, 3, 4 of the building. We identified parking, where we think pedestrian access is, vehicular access is. Next slide. So this is one of the perspective views taken from State Street, showing that we do anticipate that there be an academic core, large volume spaces for the public that is off of the main entrance. Recognizing the context that we're in South Kingstown, brick, stone. We don't want to make it look like a spaceship has landed here in South Kingstown. Next slide. Oh, go back one. There you go. Here's another view from Columbia. This shows where we anticipate the bus entrance to come in, where we're looking at the Hazard Building to the right, the academic core, maybe a location for the media center that would have a view out onto the open fields, where we have the gymnasium going over to the left. Next slide. A view from the Hazard Field showing the gymnasium. We have locker rooms. We have CTE spaces spread throughout the building, the media center leading to the Hazard Building, student outdoor areas in between the new building and the Hazard Building. There's a wonderful opportunity for that. Next slide. And again, just a close-up of that area that I was just talking about. We want to be respectful of the context of the Hazard Building and the new high school. We want to create those outdoor opportunities for the community and students. Next slide. So this is a view of the proposed athletic improvements at Curtis Corner. And I want to see if I can see something. If you look closely, there is an outline of the existing track as well as the existing Curtis Corner, give you some context of the new improvements. The field house that we're showing here is not part of this project, but we did want to show you that we are thinking ahead and making accommodations for it in the future so that it would be appropriately aligned with a properly aligned field and track with bleachers, pickleball courts, plenty of parking, the district admin office. Next slide. So I briefly want to show some interior images of high schools across the country that represent some of the spaces we want to look for in a new century teaching and learning space for a high school. Student commons, we want to make sure that those are expressed in the buildings, make sure they're functional, make sure they're appealing to both student use and community use. Next slide. The classrooms will look different than they do currently in the existing high school. The existing high school was built at a different time, at a different pedagogy and instruction. The new high school will be much more flexible and accommodate small groups as well as collaboration. Next. We certainly don't want to forget about the health and wellness spaces of the high school, such as fitness rooms and gymnasiums, making sure that they are appropriately sized with the equipment that's needed. Next slide. Again, the media center, this happens to look out on a beautiful vista, but I'm absolutely confident that looking out onto the new open fields and spaces will be just as beautiful. But we want to create spaces that are inviting to the students and the staff. Next slide. And we certainly don't want to forget the importance this community has on the arts. So we want to make a performance space that can house the student body, that can have large events, that is just that the caliber of the space matches the caliber of your students. Next slide. The CTE spaces that will align with the pathways that the high school has really need to be appropriately designed and constructed to match the programs that they're trying to teach. Again, the caliber of the space needs to match the caliber of the students. Okay, excellent. Yeah.
So I'll touch on this. CTE stands for Career and Technical Education. This is something that I'm particularly passionate about, being in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry. It's important to note that Rhode Island, as the United States in general, is suffering a severe shortage of people going into these careers. These are good, high-paying jobs that are desperately needed, that's honest work, and we need to have these spaces within inside our schools because college is not right for everybody. We need to start encouraging kids to travel down pathways that don't necessarily lead to a 4-year college at the end. I currently serve on the board of directors for a national nonprofit that goes into schools that provides mentorship and career guidance for kids looking to enter these trades. And I'm going to tell you one very interesting fact that we'd like to talk about. The average age of a carpenter in Rhode Island is 55 years old. So we need students to be encouraged to join these trades, and we need spaces that inspire them to go into this great work that we have in front of us. So I'm happy to take any questions on CTE at the end, but I think what's most important about these slides that you've been seeing about what a potential new school could look like is A, its flexibility. The careers and the education that is offered today fits for careers that are available now in the United States. Schools like South Kingstown High School, built in the 1950s, were built to address demographic challenges at the time, such as the baby boom, and were also designed to meet the manufacturing careers that were available at that time. I don't think it's any secret if I tell all of you that the manufacturing jobs that were available in the 1960s are no longer available in the United States today. So why are we still educating students in schools and with pedagogies that don't reflect the creativity, the critical thinking, the collaboration that is required for jobs in the modern America? So that's one of the reasons why schools look very different today if we're designing them for 21st century education than if we were designing them for the 1950s and 1960s. So you may notice that these aren't all a bunch of classrooms where everybody is sitting forward and a bell rings and you move from one room to the next room. What does that sound like? Sounds a lot like manufacturing, where you're all supposed to follow a very specific process. Everyone looks forward, everyone does their one specific job and moves forward. Those are not the careers, again, that are available today. And those are not the careers that we're training kids for either, to go into the trades, to go into CTE, or to go into a 4-year school, or whatever they want to do after high school.
Go ahead, the next slide. Continuing on with what Chris had mentioned, there are medical nurse CTE pathways here that we want to make sure we have the proper accommodations for in the new facility. Next slide.
I'll talk at next slide, please. So I'll talk a little bit about the budget that we've built for this project. As many of you may be aware, this project was originally budgeted at $125 million. Well, Left Field came on board and we said the project that South Kingstown wants, that has been discussed over a year and a half with the community, is not a $125 million project. It is a $150 million project. We did not want South Kingstown to end up in a situation like you may have seen across Rhode Island, where because of the cost of construction, whole parts of buildings and whole programmatic spaces are now being cut off to meet budget. I think it's evidenced by our great budget, the fact that we had 5 different construction managers submit to work on this project, which we'll be interviewing several of them tomorrow. But when I go through the budget, you'll look at hard costs. Hard costs are the costs of construction itself. These are things like masonry. These are things like carpentry, your roof. These are your hard costs. Your soft costs are soft costs, which mean your engineering fees, your architecture fees, your furniture, fixtures, and equipment, your furniture inside your school. These are all considered soft costs on a project. When we add the hard costs and the soft costs together, we get $133 million. Now, that $133 million is based on a cost per square foot of $765 a square foot. We are aware of 3 recent projects that have been bid in Rhode Island for high schools that have come in at $715 a square foot, $723 a square foot, and $726 a square foot. So with our $765 a square foot number, we are very confident that we are able to bring this project in for that budget. With that being said, we are well aware of the issues that happened in Newport. We're well aware of some of the other issues that have been happening across the state with very, very tight budgets. We knew that South Kingstown, after the long process that they've been through, would not accept a project where whole parts of the building and educational programming is being cut off to meet budget. So we recommended including an escalation contingency of $10,368 million, $10,368,000, and a owner's contingency of $6,242,000, bringing us to $150 million. It is important to note that the bond question asked to borrow up to $150 million. If this project does not cost $150 million, let's say it comes in at $133 million, it is then up to the town council whether or not they want to, how they want to use the other money, if it's even borrowed. The nice thing about this project is that you don't have to borrow the full $150 million if it does not cost $150 million for this project. And the reason we can be confident in the number that we're going to be getting for this project is because we are going to be doing something called construction manager at risk. Now, most of you are probably familiar with building a house. When you renovate your house, you hire a general contractor. Well, the way that general contractor makes his money or her money is by marking up the trade of subcontractors. So they'll mark up the mason by 5%, they'll mark up the roofer, and they'll charge a percentage for their supervision and those markups. That's generally how most projects are done outside of the commercial and world that we operate in. Construction management at risk is a completely different project delivery model. Construction manager at risk, a construction manager charges a fee for them to bid out, insure, bond, warranty, supervise the work in progress. And then we see the costs of all of the different subcontracts. So they don't mark those up. It's a transparent process where every single division of work comes before the school building committee and we can select our subcontractors based on the price. So there's no incentive for the contractor to mark up work because they get charged a flat fee, no matter if the project is $130 million or if the project is $150 million. What does that all mean? It means that the risk of bringing the project on budget falls on the construction manager, not the town. Once we sign a contract with the construction manager for a cost for this project, the responsibility of bringing that project in on budget is now the construction manager's. That's why it's called construction manager at risk. So long as we do not add any scope into the project, it is their responsibility to bring that project in under budget. Now, in terms of the overall project budget, as I've said, we feel this is an incredibly healthy budget at $765 a square foot. But having said that, we have an additional $16 million in contingencies on this project, which again, we do not have to use unless there is we're being told to do so. Next slide. And I also want to say all of this, again, is available on the project website at skschoolproject.com. You can read into detailed line items. And as I said, we have over 200 pages of independent third-party cost estimates, which break out every line of work. They will tell you exactly how much we expect every tree to cost on this job site. Next slide. Okay. And for tax implications, I'm going to bring up Town Manager Manning, who's going to talk briefly about the tax impact for this project.
Thank you. My name is Jim Manny. I am the town manager 2 years today when I came on. Town manager years, it's like 14 years, but yeah, I'm also a resident of this beautiful community. We all live in 25 years, raised my family here. So Brian Sylvia is the one that created all these documents. He's done a tremendous amount of work coming up with these numbers, and so we can be very transparent and clear on what exactly a bond would cost this town if on May 7th we find out it's the affirmative and it went forward. Brian cannot be here tonight. Usually he explains this, but I'm pretty schooled on it, so hopefully I can explain it in plain English. So let's go over the assumptions. Yeah, thank you. So the assumptions are, this is the base of what we're building all our numbers off. So the bond amortization schedule is 20 years. So what does that mean? It's a 20-year note instead of a 30-year note. The 30-year note was considered, but the value and the cost did not offset each other. That would cost us much more in interest with very little impact on the principal. So it was decided by town council to go to 20-year note. The interest rate on the bond is 3.5%. The bond interest rates are pretty steady right now. Initially, when we first started looking at this, it was 4%. They've come down a little, but this is the number we're working off. It could go up a little, it could go down a little. We don't know, but this is the most steady number we have to date. The issuance of the $150 million bond will be in May 2028 with principal and interest payments beginning in fiscal year 29. The ride reimbursement percentage of 52.5%, this is bullet number 4, will be on a $117.6 million project of eligible cost. So even though it's a $150 million bond, the ride has determined that the number they would reimburse us on for the school building would be $117.6 million. The median assessed value of a single family property right now is $468,300. That is a number we use when we start calculating what the tax impact could be for just an average person here in town. Growth on the tax base is 9.98% in statistical reval years based on the average of the last four. So what does that mean? So every 3 years, we have a revaluation. By law, we must have a full reval, which means they could come into your house to see if you did any renovations, if any new buildings went up, they'd walk the perimeter or so forth. The statistical reval, which we are starting the process now, is because we're in that cycle after the full reval last time, is they just look at vision appraisal was hired, they look at additions, new businesses, buildings that were put up and so forth. So it's just an estimate, but it's required by state law to have these revals. Growth on the number 7, growth on the tax base of 15.27% in full reval years. So what does 6 and 7 both mean together? A full reval year is what I explained a minute ago, where it's really more detailed, where measurements of houses could be taken. Did you put an addition on your house? Has anything changed in your property? The vision appraisal could come around and ask, could we inspect your home and just see what the if there's any changes that would affect its assessed value. And number 8, the growth on the tax base of $35 million on non-reval years. So every year, an estimate is given on what was the growth of the town. The growth of the town is how big did our tax base grow, which could bring in additional revenue to this town every year. For example, we just passed the budget the other night. We were very fortunate to get to a 0% increase in taxes. That's a rare occurrence for any municipality, especially in high inflation years. The town's pretty proud of that. But one of the reasons we were able to do that is because we had growth in this town it was $49 million growth in this 1 year period. It was up $6 million from the estimate of $39 million that we estimated last year, which is good. That means we were able to bring down the tax rate by a portion. The reason I explain all this to you is because this is stuff, when we're projecting 20 years out, is all calculated to ensure that. Yes, so your house, well, that's a complicated question, first of all. So your house is assessed at a certain rate by vision appraisal. That is what you are taxed on. The market rate is not what you're taxed on. Would the market rate affect the assessed value? At some point it could. It will. So once again, I'll go over that. It's whatever your assessed value is, that is the rate of that is what you would pay taxes on, not market rate. Good? All right. All right. Let's go to the next slide. Please. So this slide here, there's been some confusion on it, and I'll explain it as best I can. So once again, it'll be in layman's terms. It'll be in common sense math. So let's look at this number here. So that is what the tax impact would be in a home that is assessed at that median price of $468,300. So what that 318, what does that number mean? That is the tax impact on someone's home for the bond only per year, that if you have a house that's valued at that median price, 468. If you look at every number after that, which goes up $100,000, we all know what our houses are worth by our tax bills. Just look and you can slide across and see what the tax impact would be for the bond only on if it passes on May 7th. The confusion came if you look on the far right number, and it's worth me noting it because we always get this question. So members of the council have asked us to project 20 years out what would be the tax implication that someone could face? What would they be paying for the entirety of this bond? But if you notice, the bond's a 20-year bond, it's $318. You do 20 times 318, it does not come up to $94.68. It comes up to about $6,400. That has come up often. So why is that? The original number that we were looking at for the tax impact on a median priced house was $426. But because of the growth of the town that I just explained, with the town's tax base, and we have a very healthy tax base in this town, as it goes up, it reduces the impact that you will feel, the average person, as the years continue on. So what does that 318 signify? Once the bond is issued, that's when the progressive climb would start of what a tax impact would be. So if you divide the 318 by 5 years, which is when that growth would start, comes out to 60 something dollars a year, compounded. So 60 something this year, 120 something the next year, and so forth, till you get to that estimated number of 318. So picture a graph where the first 5 years are going like this, then it levels off, and for the next 15 years, it stays steady. And that is because that would be the cost of the bond for that 20-year plan that we have. If I've confused anyone, you can ask a question now. Got it? All right. Let's go to the next page, please. Okay, so that's the page that I have in front of me. Once again, let's look at this number. That's the number that we are using for the bond only, what the tax impact would be for the average person in this town if they have a home valued at that amount. So is there a question that just came up? Yep, so go ahead.
I think there's some confusion.
Go ahead.
So, the first one question that was asked is what happens at 2030? So it's $318 per year. It's not 318 plus 318 plus 318 plus 318. If you pay $1,000 now, in 2030, you will pay 1,318. In 2021, you'll pay 1,318. It doesn't compound upon itself. And the reason that being is that it's built into the budget at 2030. So that's 318 carries for the life of that bond until 2048, at which time that $318 payment will drop off your taxes. So that was one question that I believe was asked. Would you mind, Phil, you want to grab me the next one?
So that's actually a good question. And I met with the tax assessor today. I met with the finance director. So there's, oh, what's that? Yeah. So the question is, if your value of your home goes up, are you assessed at that rate with the same tax rate that we have? The answer is no. So as your assessments go up, in normal years, the tax rate would go down. So your assessed values go up, the town needs a certain value. For example, the tax levy is $77 million this year, $77.2 million. That's what the town needs to run our operations, the town's operations, and the school operations. So, so once again, if the value of your home goes up, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be paying the same tax rate. Usually the tax rate goes down because we just need that amount of money. We don't need additional amounts of money because you'll be paying a lot more. I hope that answered you. Any other questions pop up on that?
Someone again asked about realtor.com as a median value versus the assessed value.
So the median, the realtor.com, we don't use those numbers. The numbers we concentrate on is your assessed value here in town. So, any more questions come up on that? Right. So, but it's not as simple to answer it that way. So the question came up in 2030, whatever your house is assessed at, what will you be paying in taxes? Let me go over this again. The 318 is the amount for the bond. There are many variables that could happen. If I knew it was going to happen in 2030, I'd be figuring out right now, right? We all would. So those are like guesses. I've owned my home for about 25 years. Did I ever think my home would appreciate 200 to 300%? I never figured that. So we don't know what 2030 brings, but what your house is worth in 2030, could your taxes go up for the operations of the town, for all other things? Of course they could. But the bond number stays constant. So once again, it's only compounded till the bond's fully issued. You pay that 60 something dollars first year, 120 something dollars the next year, 180 something dollars the year after, 240 the year after, 300 till you get to that 318 number that we're estimating. Starts climbing the first 5 years, 60, 120, 180, 240, then it goes to 300, $318. That's the number we come up with. Then it stays like that for the life of the bond. If your taxes go up, it's for other reasons. Operations of the town. Okay, any other questions come in? Okay, all right. Let's go to the next slide, please. That's it? Okay, thank you. Yep.
Mr. Manning.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Question
Yeah.
back here? Hi.
Hi. I actually had a question about the projected student body sizes over the next 20, 30 years in South Kingstown. I've been reading local information and we've lost a lot of student population. Of course, the birth rate is going down, but there's also the loss to parochial school, private school, and homeschooling. Are we building this with some capacity to have children perhaps return to the public schools? Because you can't get those spaces in a homeschool situation.
So we have the subject matter experts on this is the school superintendent and members of the school committee. So whoever wants to answer that one. Or you.
I'll take the first shot at it. So I'll take the first shot at it. So currently in South Kingstown, as of 2 days ago, there were 111 high school students that attend other high schools in Rhode Island that South Kingstown taxpayers are funding. There's a number of reasons why that might be, but suffice it to say that the Rhode Island Department of Education believes that if you build a new high school, that students will start going back to their original high school. So we are designing this school for 725 students. Having said that, the types of spaces that you see in this building, the reason that there are differing sizes is to add in flexibility into a building so that they can change with population growth and population bubbles. So you can have those spaces if student enrollment does creep up. We're not coming back to the community again in 5 years and saying, everybody loves the new high school, we have to build more. We're designing the school to be built to future-proof it for different generations. So that is a key concept behind 21st century educational programming and 21st century educational design. So I hope, does that answer your question to some extent? Yeah. Mhm. So there's a construction technology program that's part of the, which addresses in a small way, all of the different trade aspects in here. And I'll turn it over to Bob, who can talk a little bit more.
So with regard to our current career and technical programs, we have construction technology, which is one of our most popular, studio art. We have biotechnology, and we have medical science, where our students graduate that program with either a certified nursing assistant certificate or a emergency medical technician certificate. And we have a computer science program. And it's a very competitive situation in Rhode Island these days when students can choose the public school that they want to attend, and the home school district pays the tuition. And right now, the tuition that we pay for, we have 111 students that are going elsewhere. We pay just under $20,000 a piece for those students to go elsewhere. We would love to be able to incorporate spaces in this project to include more career and technical programs.
are we designing the space, the physical space to accommodate what we might see in the next 10, 20 years in terms of technology?
Oh,
For the sciences, the labs? I mean, who knew where we were going to be 20 years ago, right? With this iPhone, come on.
so
Huh.
you couldn't have said it better than I did when I talk about how we're building schools for careers at the time, that the careers that no longer exist before. And one of the tenets of 21st century educational programming is that you do future-proof schools to adapt to changing technology. You know, when we interviewed architects for this work, one of the questions we specifically asked them was how they saw artificial intelligence affecting educational programming in the years to come. So we are trying to use foresight to see ahead. You know, just like you said, I can't put a finger on exactly where we'll be in 20 years, what the next iPhone will be. We want to make sure that we have the infrastructure to support expanding technology and programs. That means having the right electrical components into the school. That means we're having the right, I mean, everything from the amount of outlets to how big your transformer is. All of these are being considered as we design the new school. Any other questions from? The first question is, will the income amount for the elderly tax reduction increase due to the increased cost of the taxes? That's a question not for the school building committee. I don't believe I can answer that. Jim, do you want to?
Could you repeat that question for me, please?
The question is, will the income amount for elderly tax reduction increase due to the increased cost of the taxes?
So that is a policy decision. We're getting a lot of questions like that from veterans, from seniors. But that is a policy decision the town council would have to address in the future. As of right now, there's not a plan to do that right at this moment.
Did you get that question, Chris, about solar panels?
Oh, no.
Yeah, there was a question that just popped up in the chat on will the school incorporate solar energy?
So great. It's a great question. So what I can tell you is that this school is being designed to meet the Northeast Collaborative for High Performing Schools. What is the Northeast Collaborative for High Performing Schools? It is a sustainability measure that is basically in place to make sure that we are designing schools with an eye towards sustainability, not just in terms of how the buildings are made, in terms of the materials, but also about their energy efficiency and usage downstream. And in terms of whether or not we'll have solar panels or geothermal wells, all I can tell you specifically at this time is that the school will absolutely meet the Northeast Collaborative for High Performing Schools, and the budget that you currently have allows this project to target much higher sustainability goals than other projects here in Rhode Island. We believe that geothermal is a real possibility for this project. We believe that this building has the potential to be free of fossil fuels if the budget allows. So there's a lot of things that we're considering, but at a bare minimum, this school will be designed to the Northeast Collaborative for High Performing Schools, which is a very sustainable building.
So one of the questions was, have we looked at renovation of this building as opposed to new construction? So part of the RIDE Stage 2 process requires us to look through all options, and renovating this school to meet the programmatic needs of the future, as well as be a cost-effective solution, was just not applicable. This is a building that is twice the size of what it needs to be for 725 students. If you were to take the size of Broad Rock and remove that from this building, that's how much square footage we need to remove from this building. It's not cost effective to heat or maintain a building of this size. Plus, it was added on over so many years that circulation is poor, which really has an impact on the safety and security of the school. So we did look at renovation. It is not applicable. It was not approved. What was approved by RIDE is a new school building on School Street.
So I just a follow up to that, and that is that the Rhode Island Department of Education's Chief Operating Officer, Mario Carreño, has received a few emails from residents of South Kingstown specifically asking about renovation. And this email was sent to the school building committee today, and I'll read from it. We have been asked about what happens if the bond is not approved. On December, so please be advised that the Rhode Island Department of Education has received several questions from South Kingstown residents pertaining to the possibility of using the May 7th, 2024 bond authorization to support renovations at the existing high school. I am writing to confirm our mutual understanding that the approval granted by the Council on Elementary and Secondary Education, as well as the Enabling Act approved by the Town Council and General Assembly, only permits these funds to be used for a new South Kingstown High School. Additionally, we have been asked about what happens if the bond is not approved. On December 19th, 2023, the Council on Elementary and Secondary Education awarded South Kingstown $9,748,398 in pay-as-you-go funding from the statewide bond. These resources are contingent on the project moving forward and will be repurposed to another community in the event that a new high school does not advance. Further, in order to have future projects considered for reimbursement, the district would need to submit a new necessity of construction application. While future projects can still receive the base rate of 35%, the temporary housing aid bonuses that provide up to 20% additional aid will not be available pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 16-7-40. So what does that mean? A little bit more simplified. It means that this project that we are currently building, if it's a new high school, is eligible for up to 55% reimbursement. Our target is 52.5% reimbursement. If the project does not move forward and we have to go back out through stage 1 and 2 when we do renovations, we will lose out on pay-go funding, and we will be only reimbursed at 35% of the project cost. And before I turn it back over to the town manager, there was one question about will the demolition end up in landfills? I'm glad that question was asked, because the Northeast Collaborative for High Performing Schools, again, has very specific limitations on where we can dispose of building materials during demolition.
There's a question, I'll read the question. Why are we looking at the bond tax impact in a vacuum from the other forecasted town tax increases? For example, town operations, school operations, etc. What's the big picture on tax impacts? It's a good question because we've calculated it 3 different ways. But one thing's for certain, the bond is a constant. That's what we're voting on, the bond. And how much will the bond increase what you're already paying? I paid my taxes today. I know what I'm paying. How much will it increase that moving forward? So the other things, the town operations that's a variable. School operations is a variable, but the constant is the bond. That's what we're voting on. And what will that impact be moving forward? There's one thing I want to, I'll give you an example. We estimated this year that town operations would go up approximately 1.7%. By state law, the highest any municipality can go up is 4% unless you get an exemption for something very unusual. Well, let's 1.7 would be in the win category. Anything less than 2, in my opinion. We brought it down from 1.7 to 1.29. That's a real win. We get additional $700,000 in revenue that we were not counting on. Just last week we found out, which brought our tax increase to 0. So that's a variable. We thought we had all the answers, and then we got some really good news, and we were able to lower it to 0. I want to clarify one thing I said 10 minutes ago. Why does the tax rate go from the tax bill go 60 to 120 something to 180 to 240 to 300? It's because that's when we're ramping up. The 318 number is of a tax impact is when the bond is fully issued in the 5 to 7 year period. So it's like having a line of credit for 150 million, if you want to look at it that way. And as we're drawing money out, we took the whole 150 million out right away, which we can't. It would immediately go to that highest number, but it's not. We're drawing from that, and it's ramping up the project. Then it ramps up, then it's completed. Goes up, and then it's a constant. The number we really use is even a little more complicated as far as the 20-year bond. It's really 23 years on how we pay for this. It's because we're ramping up, then the bond is locked in at 150 and it's 20 years from that point, right? But there's pay-go money that comes in, and Brian Sylvia explains that perfectly. It's money the state gives you to offset some of these bills in the first 3 years to really bring the impact down on the town until they can fully issue that bond and get it moving in that direction.
So, having said that, well, are there any other questions from this group here? Hi.
So, the bond is just for the high school, but are there other needs in the elementary or the middle school levels that are also going to be addressed and or are being set aside because of the focus on the high school?
So the focus of this bond right now of the $150 million is for the high school. As we mentioned, there are significant potential cost savings, which we could, if the town council directs us, reallocate those to other projects within the district. With that being said, that is a town council matter. It's not for something for the school building committee to choose. What's important to note of other projects that there's multiple different funding options available for the school building committee and the town council to consider. One example is that every single school department in Rhode Island, the last few years, has been required to spend 3% of their operating budget every single year on maintenance and capital improvement projects. That is a new development. So that's one of the reasons why you see now projects being done every single year, is because now school departments are required to put aside part of their operating budget to do so. And if they don't, then there are financial penalties associated with that. Did you have another one before I turn over to Bob? Oh, Bob, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Chris, I would just add on to your answer, saying that the budget that we just approved for fiscal year 2025 that got finalized by the council Monday night includes in it $1 million from our current fund balance that will go toward our capital improvement plan. And our capital improvement plan, if this bond passes, is focused on the needs of our elementary schools. And we've also we also have finished spending the bulk of our federal ESSER money on improvements to our elementary schools and our middle schools. So we're pledged to keep up our maintenance of effort to maintain our other schools. But I would also point to the fact that we're going to have should this pass, we would have a brand new high school. And it stands to reason that we would not be investing a whole lot of money in the facility here at the high school for quite some time. And that would allow us to focus on our elementary and middle schools.
So yeah, that is correct. In terms of a new high school, we'll have a workmanship warranty for over a year. Most of the mechanical systems will have 20, roofs will have 30-year warranties. So the amount of maintenance that will cost the school department for a new school is much lower. The building will have a complete warranty for over a year. And of course, these buildings are designed to be energy efficient as part of the Northeast Collaborative for High Performing Schools. You guys are going to be well aware of that by the time I'm doing that Northeast Collaborative. So, Bill, we're currently, right now, the current high school is 243,000 square feet. That means that you are cleaning, you are heating, you are cooling a 243,000 square foot building. The new high school is designed to be 143,000 square feet. So that's 100,000 square foot reduction in space. But just to give you an idea of how big that is taking the entire Broad Rock Middle School out of a building. So you can imagine the cost efficiencies associated with reducing a building to that size.
The question that's up now is about the athletic facility.
So the $765 number that I mentioned is just for the high school alone. We actually have a separate budget of $11 million that was included in those final numbers that is specifically for the athletic complex at Curtis Corner Field. So that is an $11 million budget for the athletic complex at Curtis Corner Field. Yes. A part of that 117, 11 million of that is for the athletic complex at Curtis Corner Field. In terms of next steps and schedule, next slide, please. So if the bond is approved by the voters on May 7th, our next step is stage 3. So stage 3 is design documentation, where we will have more community engagement sessions. We will have construction manager engagement. We will have final presentation to the community, and we will enter into the design review process. So the summer of 2024, this is when we're going to have these community engagement sessions. That's when the absolute final design of the building is going to take place. The construction manager, once brought on board, will be developing detailed logistical plans and operational plans about how we can build a school safely while this school remains in operation during the project. And of course, a final presentation to show everyone exactly what they're going to be getting. By the time this project is fully developed, you will know where every single tree on this site is going to be. That is the level of design detail that goes into this work before it is properly bid out. And then, of course, stage 4 construction starting in summer 2025, opening up in fall of 2027 for the school year then. Okay. If there are any additional questions, I do encourage you to either reach out to a member of the school building committee. You can also email us as skschoolproject@gmail.com. Again, that's skschoolproject@gmail.com. You can also visit the project webpage, skschoolproject.com, and you can click on the Contact Us button as well. So there are multiple different ways for you to engage with us. And as I said, we get back to you very quickly. Are there any other questions from this group that's with us here today?
I think we got all the questions that came up. The last one that came up was about projects at the other schools, which I think we answered.
Just something I wanted to, Kate Massananti, member of the school committee, but chair of the school building committee. I did want to bring up about the athletic complex. Sometimes it gets a little confused because it's like, why do we need another athletic complex? We have a rec center and, you know, we have a track, we have a field. Why do we need this? And one of the answers is the current state of our track and field. First of all, its location is in a swamp. Anybody who's lived in South Kingstown and or gone to our schools over the decades calls it the swamp for a reason. And so the idea would be to get it out of the swamp and get it back, you know, on a place with that is not wetland. But another key component is that it's actually part of our school, right? So we need our athletes need a football field, they need a soccer field, they need a lacrosse field, they need a usable track. At the moment, our track is not usable for track meets. Our students have to go to other facilities. So I think, and we could do repairs and work on that outside of the bond, but we wouldn't get the 55% reimbursement on it. So we've been as efficient and thoughtful as possible when it comes to the finances. And again, it's a proposal that we're putting out to the community and asking whether they want to approve it or reject it. This isn't something we're doing. We're asking, does the community want that? And that's what the vote is on May 7th. Does this community support the project we've put out there? You're either going to approve it or you're going to reject it. We're not imposing our will on anybody. We've been tasked with putting together what we feel incorporates all these requirements that have come from RIDE, that have come from our town, that have come from our community. And we're putting the project out there. And now it's up to the community to say, yes, I accept that, or no, I reject it.
So one final question did come in. You will be building and tearing down in a neighborhood. How will you minimize debris, dust, and construction noise. So I'm happy to say that this is somewhere that I have experience in, as well as the 3 construction managers that were interviewing this project. I'm in current process in North Providence right now of building a school within 20 feet of an existing school that's only 20 feet away, and we'll be tearing down that school too. I've demolished schools in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, in incredibly dense neighborhoods. There's a lot of specific ways that we achieve this. I encourage, if you can, to visit the construction manager interviews tomorrow, where all 3 construction management firms will be going into detail, but there's a lot of ways: water cannons to keep down noise, specific hours of working. There's a lot of different ways that we mitigate what we call construction impact on neighborhoods. And as I said, on a personal note, there's going to be a new school being built on my street. So I understand the concern that the neighbors have with construction going on very close to their home. And I can assure you that the 3 construction managers that we will be interviewing are incredibly qualified to perform this work.
Chris, I want to make sure that we have, that we've answered this question. I'm going to do the best I can here. Will the estimated total bond term be recalculated and shared, since the original base numbers used are no longer accurate due to the increased number of taxpayers?
I'm not sure all that's factual, but the bottom line is the recalculation's done as needed all the time, and it will be the most accurate number we have. I'm not sure exactly some of the facts on that question.
And then another question asks about the Curtis Corner site and whether or not the diagram that's provided crosses wetlands.
So actually, that's one of the reasons why the CCMS building is slated to be demolished as part of this work, is so we avoid those wetlands. Those wetlands represent a pretty significant obstacle, which is why the demolition of the Curtis Corner Middle School is part of this project. It's funded within this project, is so we can move that field away from those wetlands.
Explain
Yeah.
research we did on those wetlands.
Sure, it's important that these renderings are really just graphical representations of what the design intent is. During the stage 2 process, we did have an biologist go out and flag the actual wetlands at Curtis Corner, and our site civil engineer will be using that flagging to determine the buffers that he's required or she required to maintain for DEM approval. So we will not be infringing upon the wetlands.
Only thing I'll add to that is that the Department of Environmental Management for Rhode Island has a seat at the table during the RIDE design review process. All of our plans need to be reviewed by the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, just like all of our plans need to be reviewed by the Governor's Commission on Disabilities. There are multiple stakeholders that we have to make sure that their requirements are being met for these new schools.
Okay, well, on behalf of South Kingstown School Department, I would like to thank everybody for coming out tonight and thank everybody who tuned in from home. If your questions were not answered, or if you come up with more questions, I encourage everyone to go to skschoolproject.com. All of the answers are hopefully there. If they're not, we have a lot of members here from the building committee who would be happy to respond. So thank you all for coming out, and drive safely home.